On this episode of the Naturist Living Show, Nude Cruising.
This episode of the Naturist Living Show is brought to you by Bare Oaks Family Naturist Park. At Bare Oaks, we offer traditional naturist values in a modern setting. Free your body, free your mind. www.bareoaks.ca.
Welcome, dear listener, to episode 52 of the Naturist Living Show. My name is Stéphane Deschênes. I'm your host for this podcast, and I'm also the owner of Bare Oaks Family Naturist Park. And I want to thank every one of you who's listening, all the thousands of people, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people we're getting. But I want to thank you specifically for listening today and listening to this show. And I want to thank all the people who have been very actively sharing the show on their Facebook, Twitter, podcasts, Google+, all types of social media. Some people have been very, very active, and it's very much appreciated because it doesn't just help the show. This show is about spreading the word, telling people all about naturism. And the more you share this show, the more you like Bare Oaks, the more you put emphasis and comments and post it and cross-post it and share it around the world, the more people will discover naturism, the higher we will rank in the cyber world out there, and the more you will do to make naturism mainstream. So thank you, and keep it up and don't stop. I got a comment from Stephen, who is the webmaster for AANR East, and he actually called in and left a voicemail. So rather than repeat what he said, I'll let him tell you directly.
Hi, Stefan. This is Stephen Stoller. I'm the webmaster for AANR East, the eastern region of the American Association for Nude Recreation. I'm also the person who has developed the AANR East Android app that's on Google Play. Just search for AANR-East.com. I'm listening to the podcast of the Naturist Living Show, of the one about Mormon nudists, and I noticed that you announced that it's available on Stitcher. Well, for the past 6 months, your show has also been available on our Android app. We don't have an iPhone app, but it's on our Android app. And I would guess that you've been getting a lot of hits on it from there. Basically, there's a button you could press with an icon for the Naturist Living Show, and then all of the episodes come up, and you could download it or to listen to later, or you could stream it, or whatever. And when a new episode comes up, it's automatically listed.
So again, thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for putting it in the app. That's fantastic. I really appreciate the support. And everyone should go and download the app if you have an Android device and show your support for AANR East and what they're doing as well. The trip to France that I announced a few episodes ago is almost done. We're recording this in February of 2013, if you're listening later on. But if you're current and you're just listening right after it's come out, we've extended the deadline for booking until March 22nd. It was going to be February 28th. But a lot of people have shown interest, and I understand it's very far from July to make your plans, but in order to get the special pricing we have, we need to book the accommodations ahead of time. They need to know how many we have so they can set them aside. We have I think it's about a dozen bungalows booked already. 20, I think it's 27 people. I don't remember the exact number. Maximum is 50. So there is room still if you're interested in coming. I'll provide a link in the show notes so that you can go directly there and contact and get more information. So if you're interested, please book soon. We have enough people. The trip is going ahead, and that's fine if it's a smaller number. We don't need to be 50. But if people are interested, and we've heard lots of interest, but the people have not booked yet, you need to book soon. We have to finalize this, and we have to close it. So you have until March 22nd. So it is February 2013, again, if you're catching up into the future. And while we're in the southern part of Canada, we're the most southern part of Canada, well, not absolutely most, but southern Ontario, and north of Toronto is very much further south. If you look on a map, we're almost at the same latitude as Boston, Massachusetts. We are, you would drive almost completely east to go to Boston, Massachusetts, other than you have to get around the lake. But so Ontario doesn't get a ton of snow. It's certainly not by any stretch of the imagination the coldest part of Canada at all. It's actually quite warm most of the winter. We don't get very much snow, but it's still cold. And what we all like to do in Canada is go away for a little while in the winter and recharge, let our bodies get warm again, let our skin generate that vitamin D with a little bit of sun exposure, and just basically be able to take it all off for a little while again before we come back to beautiful winters. I'm not saying there's not beauty in the winter. It is beautiful, the snow and the light and the crispness of the winter. But it's nice to be warm again. So with that in mind, my wife Linda and I were very privileged to take part in the Big Nude Cruise. This was the 50th cruise organized by Bare Necessities. Nude Cruise, of course. And they've been doing it since 92. And this was their biggest one yet. They chartered the biggest boat they could find because they wanted to celebrate. So we traveled to Fort Lauderdale, and we left in what must have been the worst snowstorm of the year. The year's not over yet, but it was a lot of snow. I mean, it was, if you look in the news, in the eastern seaboard of the United States and eastern Canada, central Canada was hit pretty badly by this snowstorm. And we weren't sure we were going to leave. Most flights were canceled, and certainly when we got to the airport, the Friday just one day before the cruise was leaving on a Saturday, we went to the airport, and only 3 or 4 flights out of the dozens and dozens on the board at that time were on time. I don't know how that's possible. Somebody was looking out for us, and we got on the plane. There certainly was a big delay taking off. We actually boarded right on time, but then there was a delay pushing back because there was so much snow. I was sitting and looking out the window. I couldn't see anything because the window of the plane was completely covered in snow. And we went to the de-icing pad, and that took several hours waiting to be de-iced. And then as soon as you're de-iced, of course, you can't wait for the snow to build up again. So right away, we're on the runway to take off, and you can't see anything. It's just white out outside the window as we're taking off, and the plane rolls down the runway and takes off, and you see nothing. You can feel you're not on the ground anymore, but you can't see it. You couldn't see the ground when you were on the ground. You certainly can't see anything when you're in the sky. And then suddenly we popped through the clouds. And it was perfectly clear, of course, because we're above the storm, and the sun is setting in the distance because we're looking directly west as we're taking off. And it was just beautiful. And of course, a few hours later, we were in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, stayed the night, and boarded the cruise ship the next morning. And it was interesting. It was only my second cruise. It was Linda's first cruise. I hadn't been on a cruise for decades. This was a much, much bigger ship than we'd ever been on before, that I'd ever been on before. And everything was just like a regular cruise, of course, because in port you have to be dressed, and everyone was dressed. So we are settled in our cabin, and we went to the main pool deck, and we sat around, and after about half an hour, this is what we heard.
once again, a very good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. This is Henny, your cruise director, and I'm talking to you from the bridge here on board the Carnival Freedom. We know that everyone is upstairs on the little deck and you're having yourselves a great time, and I've just been informed by our captain that we have reached 3 miles from land. You know what that means, ladies and gentlemen? It is time to let go. That's right. Every single person on board, you are now invited, and of course, welcome to go ahead and uncover the fun. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, you are now clear to uncover that fun and have yourselves a great night. Welcome each and every one of you on your fantastic Bare Necessities cruise, and of course, this will be your home for the next 8 fun-filled days. Our home is your home, everybody, so go out there and have some fun. Remember that there's tons of great things happening for you all night long. We've also got that fantastic Welcome Aboard show for you tonight at 10:30 in the Victoriana Theater. That's what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. You are now clear. That's right. We have lifted off and sailed away. We are ready to go. Have yourselves a fantastic time. Thank you very much. We'll see you at the Welcome Aboard show. Bye-bye.
And from there on, it was a nude cruise, and it was much better, of course. And it was actually just a fantastic experience. So while I was on the cruise, I had a chance to meet a lot of people. And actually, I want to thank everyone that came up to me and said hi. It was heartwarming to know that so many of you on the cruise who were listening to the show took the time, took the effort to come and say hi and chat and shake my hand. And I'd name everybody that I met, but there were too many, and I'd be afraid, of course, to forget some names, because sadly I'm very bad with names, which is it just really frustrates me that I can forget people's names so easily. So my apologies to anybody whose names I don't remember when I meet you. But it was wonderful to meet everyone out there. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the cruise. Thank you for taking the time to come and say hi, and thank you, of course, for listening. But while I was on the cruise, I also met Nancy. Nancy Tiemann is her and her husband Tom were the ones who started Bare Necessities and still own and operate it. And I sat down with her to learn a little bit more about how this happened and what they do.
I'm Nancy Tiemann. I'm owner and president of Bare Necessities Tour and Travel Company.
And this is a very special cruise, I understand.
Well, it's the Big Nude Boat, which is what we've dubbed it, and it's the largest nudist cruise we've ever done. So we're very excited about that.
And it's also your 50th cruise, right?
Oh, yeah, it is. I can't believe it, but it sure is.
So how did this all get started?
Well, I think like lots of people, we stumbled into a situation where people were being socially nude. For me, it was at Club Orient, at Orient Beach down in St. Martin while I was on vacation. And it turned out to be one of those when in Rome kind of situations. And I came away from that experience, which was a very positive one for me, wondering what else was available out there once I got home from vacation. And that's how I became acquainted with the AANR and the Naturist Society, and found some other clubs and resorts in Florida, as well as a small club in my own area outside of Austin, Texas. And I began to enjoy social nude recreation. And whenever I would sit down with a group of people and we would be talking, the common thread in the theme of conversations was, wouldn't it be great if we could do a real upscale vacation product for nudists? And I began to think, what would be the best way to do that, where we would sort of have our privacy not be in people's face, have our privacy in a cruise ship came to mind. And it wasn't an original idea. There was another company that tried to do it and was not able to do it. And so we took somebody's good idea and made it good. And it's been a whole lot of fun. It was a good experience the first time, so we just continue to do it.
So obviously it's working well now. You've got 3,000 on this ship, and there's a few every year. The first time, though, did it work? Did you actually make money?
Yes, I think that we did make money. We must have, because we had enough money to buy the next ship. So, but we were clueless. I was a banker, and my husband and my partner now was an attorney, and so we really didn't know anything about the travel business at all. But we knew that there was a market. And so we went with what we were passionate about and believed in, and in spite of what some people in the business were telling us, which was not to do it. And it was actually the owner at the time of Cypress Cove, Jim and Pete Hadley, and they have since both passed. But he said to us, and I think he was fairly renowned in what he was doing, and he said, if you sail it, they will come. And he said, Pete and I will be there. And I knew just with his endorsement that I'd have at least 200 people from Cypress Cove going, and that's one of the largest clubs in our country. And so it was. And he and Pete were on that first cruise. He didn't make it to the second cruise, but Pete sailed with us for several years after. There were a lot of naysayers, but there were also people that I respected within the community that really believed what I did, and that was that there was a market for it.
So you certainly seem to be going against the story that's out there that there's a declining interest in naturism or nudism, and that there's no market, and that nudists are cheap and don't want to spend any money. Do you have any advice for those clubs that are having a hard time?
I really don't. I don't know what people often ask me that question or similar question. If this is so, how can you be filling up cruise ships, 3,000 passenger cruise ships? And it all comes back to having a passion and having a belief and providing a service. I think the service industry, I'm certainly not directing this to any club or resort in our country, but the service industry by and large in our country has really gone by the wayside. And I think if you're willing to take care of your people, provide a service, a good service for a good dollar, that people will respect that and use your facility. It's the only thing that I can think of that I do different than I think a lot of companies and icons of the American society is no longer doing. And we answer our own phones, and I think that's a huge part of it. People do spend a lot of money at clubs and on cruise ships and that sort of thing, and they want to be able to talk to you and ask questions, and I think that we have to be more open to that, because what we're doing here and what clubs and resorts around our country are doing are supporting a community of people and growing a community of people, while that community may not be partaking in card-carrying-ist or ism, they still are enjoying this as a choice for vacation, and we have to respect that. And while they may not want to be a member of something per se, this is still a choice for a vacation, and we should be making some sort of concessions to draw those people into our clubs and resorts around the country.
So you've this is over 50 cruises. Is there something or things you've tried that didn't work?
Yes. Early on, we were encouraged to make it open to families and children, and we thought that was the best way to stay in within the the bylaws and the decorum of the AANR. What we found from our passengers was that this was a mom and dad and grandma and grandpa type getaway. They didn't, the next week they might be bringing their kids to Disney World or something, but this was a vacation that they wanted to take on their own. They appreciated the fact that on our cruises there weren't a lot of children running around. So we chose decided to keep it at that, really by the request. A lot of people ask me, why is it adults only? It was really by the request of our customer. What we began to see is just nobody. We actually did. It was our second or third year. We decided to try what we did on ships. We took over a resort in Jamaica. It was not a traditionally nudist resort. It was a regular resort, but it had the privacy. It had its own beach, and it was called Dragon Bay Villas. And we took over that resort with the idea that we would have and we got a very good price on it, where we would have a family type gathering where the price would be good enough to where you could bring your kids down. There would be swim instructors, there would be nature hikes, and somebody doing arts and crafts as well for the kids while the grown-ups enjoyed themselves. And it was 2 weeks back to back. It was $700 a person, all included accept your flight down there and your alcoholic beverages. I mean, it was just unheard of prices. 3 children in 2 weeks. 2 of them were teenagers. One of them was a 5-year-old. So that spoke loudly to me that this is a vacation that people choose to take away from their kids, and that they like to take their kids to the resorts or have other vacation opportunities with their children. So we listened to our people and followed that.
And so what's the future for Bare Necessities?
More the same. More the same. People have been asking me this week whether we're going to go larger. I think this is about it. I think that there's a point in which larger is not necessarily better. It's nice to be able to arrive at this place and know that there's still a market out there for larger cruises. I think that this class ship is nice. I don't foresee us doing a 6,000 passenger ship. I think I would lose the sense of community there, and I really like running across people that I've known for years and being able to sit down and chat. I think you get too large and you lose that sense of camaraderie and community.
Now, we're on Carnival, but you do some other cruise lines as well. How are you, what's your relationship with cruise lines? How do they view your business?
Well, it's a lot differently than they did 22 years ago. 22 years ago, of course, we were just picking up the phones and dialing up cruise lines, charter incentive departments, and they would just hang up on us, thinking it was a prank call. And today they actually get on airplanes and come visit us in our offices and encourage us to use their ships. So our relationship is a good one with the cruise lines. I think we owe a lot of that to our customer. Our clientele is a very happy group of people. They're very laid back and much more easygoing than the traditional cruise goer on a traditional cruise. So the cruise lines like us. Plus, because we're adults only. We bring a full ship of drinking age, gambling age people along. So it speaks loudly to their bottom line. So we get a lot of calls now from the cruise lines where we used to have to call and go to them. Now they come knocking on our door. So it's nice. We work with a couple of the large cruise lines and fleets. Carnival, of course, being one, and they own the Princess line. They own Holland America and Cunard and one other Italian line. We also work with Royal Caribbean, which owns Celebrity. So those are the 2 largest cruise lines in the world, with several fleets underneath of them. And so that's a good place to be.
So tell us about the upcoming cruises or products you have for the next year.
Well, we have a lot in the water right now. We're very excited about this. And we have this cruise, of course, this week. And this year we have a Tahiti cruise that's sold out in April. And in the summer we have a cruise sailing out of Stockholm for the Baltic. We're staying overnight in Russia. It's going to be a very exciting cruise. We still have a little bit of space on that ship. We have a New Year's cruise, round trip St. Martin on a very upscale 5+ star vehicle, the Terra Moana, for New Year's 2013 going into 2014. So we actually have 4 cruises this year. And of course we have the Holland America next year, about the same time as this year's, February 9th through 17th. And then we have Fiji next year as well. And we're presently looking at some itineraries in the Mediterranean for next year as well.
And some of those are much smaller boats as well.
Yes, we do everything from large cruise ships all the way down to the boutique sailing vessels and motor yachts. And
how affordable is it?
Well, the larger ships, of course, cater to every pocketbook, and that's why we do them. This is why these are so popular, because there's a price point for everybody's pocketbook. The smaller boutique sailings are a little bit pricier. Certainly the New Year's, simply because it's over New Year's, is a pricey time of year to go. But on our cruises, they start anywhere from $750 a person and go upwards to $37,000 a person. So we have a wide variety of cruise vacations to offer.
So Nancy, of course, is a long-term, tried-and-true naturist, nudist, and she's not fazed by any of this. But what was more interesting, of course, is there was about 3,000 passengers, but it was also about 1,200 crew. And so I had the opportunity to interview Henny, who is the cruise director on the ship. The cruise director is not the captain, but the cruise director is responsible for all the activities on the ship. He's responsible for everybody having a good time and making sure everything's happening. So he actually had a lot more contact with all of the naturist and nudist passengers. And so I decided to sit down with him and interview him about what the experience was like for him.
My name is Henny van Heerden. I'm a cruise director for Carnival Cruise Lines, and I've been working for Carnival for 8 years. I started as a waiter and I worked my way up, and now I'm, as a cruise director, in charge of all entertainment activities on board the ship.
So 8 years, how many nude cruises?
One. This is the first one right here, the first nude cruise. Yeah, it's my second charter. The other one was a different group. It wasn't a nude cruise or anything like that, but I'm used to doing charters, but first nude cruise, and I'm having a good time.
So were you a little worried ahead of time?
No, we did the whole sensitivity training is what we call it, so we prepared properly for it, and they told us, listen, just be yourselves and enjoy yourselves, and then that's what we did. So I haven't found any moment during the cruise where I was uncomfortable or anything like that. In fact, I've had more fun on this cruise than I do on a regular cruise.
Oh, why do you think that is?
Well, people are just happy, they're just a good, friendly bunch, so if you're already coming in with that attitude, then it makes it so much easier for us to enjoy.
Now, was the crew apprehensive at all ahead of time?
No. A lot of people have been asking me this cruise, did some of the crew have the option to opt out of the charter or anything like that? They never gave us that option, but in the same breath, I don't think I haven't heard anyone complain about it being a nudist cruise. No one even remotely said, I don't want to do this, right? They all just went ahead with it. It's just a regular cruise for us, the way we need it to happen, as far as the operation is concerned. So, yeah, I think it worked out really well, and I don't think any of the crew are feeling any kind of discomfort or anything like that, So open minds is the crew of the Freedom, so that's good.
Are we different in any way in terms of the other cruises?
Yeah, the basically the way people perceive the cruise is different, right? Obviously, it's a charter. It's been bought by the company to rent the ship out, right? So that makes it a different feel in respect of there's another staff of people that are handling certain issues. For instance, the Bare Necessities themselves. They have their own agenda going on and their own group of activities and things, And for the most part, I wasn't really involved in all of that. But what I can see from these people going to these activities, it's lovely. They're enjoying it, So whatever Bare Necessities has supplied extra to the cruise to enhance the experience has helped us make our jobs a lot easier, right? So it's a different cruise in respect to the activities on board and what's going on, but for the most part, I think it's a regular cruise, and, that difference wasn't such an impact that it would change the way we do our work, so.
Well, I certainly have no problems finding towels. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever seen so many towels in my life. Is that typical of the other cruises too?
Of course not. Towels are readily available on every cruise, just by normal. But because of the etiquette style of the nudist groups, obviously where you sit down and you are naked, you're gonna have to go and sit down on a towel and so on. So, as part of Bare Necessities, as part of Carnival, we made sure that we have enough towels on board so that everyone has it easily accessible, and that in itself makes it so that you don't have to worry. As a naturist, you don't have to worry about where's my towel or carry it with you the whole time, because every venue you go to, you will find fresh towels waiting for you there. So I think it was a great thing to prepare, and I think it's a great convenience for everyone on board who needs towels.
I gather out of 3,000 people, most people are good, but you've had some issues with some people not getting dressed when we're in port?
Yeah. Like Bare Necessities has told me, 1/3 of the people on board are new people, right? I'm not saying they're new to naturism, I'm saying they're new to cruising maybe, right? And some of the regulations that are enforced, of course, as part of the etiquette of naturists, have not been going to plan, right? So people have been sitting down in places without towels, people have been on their balconies as we enter port naked and stuff like that, and they're just not, they just don't get it. It's illegal, right? I mean, to the countries that we're visiting and also to the United States, right? Which is the flag of the vessel. We're run by an American company. So
That issue has been rectified now. Most people are adhering to it. We have dealt with it, but it comes down to basic etiquette that the nudist community themselves enforce. Which I was very, very glad to hear. But the fact that there are people, the bad apples out there, that weren't adhering to it, it was a little bit of a hiccup, but nothing we can't handle. So.
And if some of the crew or staff wanted to, on their time off, take their clothes off, would that be acceptable?
That's a no. That's a no. We as a company have to portray a certain amount of, obviously professionalism, and we are all ambassadors for Carnival Cruise Lines, right? So us taking our clothes on, I don't feel it would be appropriate to take our clothes off, while we're working or anything like that, So I'm sure there might be some among the crew who would be open to naturism or anything like that, But for the most part, I don't think Carnival Cruise Lines would be like, because it's not something that the company wants to obviously promote. As we said, this is a charter cruise. The ship has been bought by another company and rented for a week. So for all intensive purposes, it's their ship, all right? But we are still employees of Carnival Cruise Lines, and we have to uphold our high standards.
So I guess you'll have to wait till you get off the ship.
Pretty much, yeah. Wait till I get off the ship, and then I can go. Wherever I want, So that's fine. Yeah.
A funny little side note is, when I first approached Henny in the hallway, because I had to find him, he's a very busy person, always everywhere, and he looked at me and he said, "I know you." And I was kind of puzzled. He said, "You're on Kenny versus Spenny." And what's funny about that is that show I did about 7-8 years ago. That's when it first ran, and that people still see me on that show. I mean, I was on one episode of a show that ran for 2 or 3 years, and my role in that show is only a few minutes out of the full half-hour show. So that people remember from that show always amazes me, but it keeps happening. In fact, it happened last week. I was in the Apple store buying some accessories for my Mac, and a young man, a teenager, probably about 16 years old, looks at me and he comes by, he goes, "Do you know the show Kenny versus Spenny?" And I said, "Yeah, that's me." And so I said, "Oh, cool. Geez, this is awesome. Can I just take my picture with you?" And then his friend came over and he wanted his picture with me too. Again, for a 5-minute appearance in one episode of the show. Amazing. And in the case of Henny, I asked him, I said, because he's from South Africa, I said, "Where did you see this show?" He says, "In South Africa." It's like, wow. I mean, and that amazes me, with technology today, the fact that many of you listening out there, I know, are in far places like Australia and New Zealand. It's really cool how the world is shrinking and how you can reach people everywhere. But back to the cruise. So you've heard from the organizer, you've heard from the cruise director. What was our impression of the cruise? Well, it was great. We had a fantastic time. Everyone is on this cruise, and that's important to understand. This is a clothing optional cruise. It's called a Nude Cruise, but it's clothing optional. So there were people on the cruise that were always dressed. And of course, that's good for couples where one spouse doesn't want to be nude. This is an opportunity for them to vacation together, which is, of course, much more complicated in places like Bare Oaks, where we really want to create a homogeneous naturist environment, and nudity is expected. So that certainly is an option. It was also an option for people, unfortunately, who wanted to come and look. There were a few, I think I only saw single men who were dressed the entire time, sometimes really excessively dressed. I mean, it was puzzling how much clothing they were wearing, given that it was incredibly hot and humid on deck. But they were walking around a lot. Now, if you're an established naturist like Linda and I, it doesn't phase you really, because the vast majority of people were nude. 90+%, certainly on the deck. Everybody was nude. But there were a few people who just weren't fitting in, but it does allow people who are not naturists to come on the cruise and experience it. And from that standpoint, I do think it's good to have clothing optional beaches where people can slowly learn what it is and can experience that naturism is not threatening. It's not a big deal. But clearly for some people who are on the ship, despite being surrounded by thousands of nude people, they still kept their clothes on. And the reason for that is not clear to me. And so as a result, it is not necessarily the ideal place to, the cruise that is not necessarily the ideal place for first timers, which kind of goes against what I just said. But I did meet a young woman who was there for the first time, and for the first time trying naturism, not just for the first time on a nude cruise. And she found some of it odd. I mean, she was, first of all, unfortunately, she was approached by swingers, being an attractive single woman. She was asked by a few people whether she wanted to go and party with them. And they were swingers on cruise. Again, this is a very open cruise, a very clothing optional cruise. Now, there are very strong, strict rules by Bare Necessities. You can't just walk around, for example, with lingerie. You can't wear, suggestive stuff. There's no inappropriate behavior allowed in public areas, and they have a lot of extra staff from Bare Necessities to ensure that that doesn't happen. They're always patrolling, so there's not just a crew, then there's a whole bunch of people from Bare Necessities making sure everything's okay. So we certainly never saw anything that would suggest there were swingers on board, other than we knew some of the clubs and we could tell by the behavior of a few people or the conversations that were happening that we overheard. But it wasn't a big deal and certainly didn't bother us. But for this woman, it gave her the impression at first that, naturism was all about sex, and it made her uncomfortable. And so, we got chatting. She's from Belgium, and being Francophone and me speaking French as well, we got chatting. And, I said, well, how many people have approached you? She said, oh, I don't know. Well, let's say it's a lot. Let's say a dozen. She says, oh, not that many. Also, let's say it's even more than that. Let's say it's 20, okay? Let's assume there's 20 people out there that might be swingers or might have approached you. You've got to recognize there's 3,000 people on this ship. And the real naturists are not interested in approaching you. They're going to respect your time and your space. They're there for themselves and to enjoy themselves. And they'll start chatting with you like I have, because we have something in common that we might discover, but they're not going to seek you out. And again, I don't want to sound too judgmental about swingers. If that's what people want to do, good for them. It's not my thing. I can't imagine why I'd want to do that. It's not a pure environment, but it's probably, on the other hand, what society would be like if we didn't have this big hang-up about nudity. If society was just much more tolerant and we got rid of all these laws and rules and we could just be nude whenever we want to, that's what it would be like. This cruise ship was probably an example. There would be some of us who would hang around who would be more naturist or ethical naturists in values. Then there would be people who would be still the exhibitionists and who have the fetishes and things like that. And they would be mixed together, and we would live together in some sort of harmony, and we would hang out in our own groups, and everybody would be happy. But we don't live in that society. We live in a society where we are to create these enclaves. And that's where I think you have to be more specific about what you are. Are you a swingers place, or are you a naturist club, a nudist club, an ethical naturist club, a clothing optional club? Whatever you are, let's be clear about it. But back to the cruise, it was still a fantastic experience, particularly if you're comfortable being nude and you just enjoy it for what it is. Certainly from age standpoint, it doesn't do anything for the whole, the story of the aging of naturism or nudism. I would say, my wife and I are in our late 40s, and I would say 80% of people are older than we are. But that's not because of the aging of naturism. That's because you have to have a certain amount of money to be able to afford to cruise, and you're more likely to have that when you're later in your life. You also have to have the time, to take these vacations. And, this is an adult-only cruise. Not adult-only because there's anything adult from a sexuality standpoint happening, or because nudity is deemed to be adult. That's not a problem either. But because as Nancy said, they had tried children's cruises, or cruises where children were allowed, or family-friendly cruises, and they got very few people participating. And that's because when you have children, you're earlier in life, you're younger, you don't have as much money, you're probably working harder. Your children, depending on their age, you either have to, if you're not bringing them, then you have to find babysitting, which makes it harder for you to go because you can't necessarily find people to take care of your kids for a week. And if they're older, it's hard to pull them out of school. We might have liked to bring our teenage boys with us on this cruise, but even if we'd been allowed to, they're at the point where missing that much high school would be too disruptive. And so we couldn't have done it on this particular schedule. So it's not surprising that most people on the cruises, certainly on this cruise, were older for all those reasons. That doesn't mean you can't be younger and enjoy yourself. There were plenty of people who were there who were younger. Remember, there were 3,000 people, and we met, lots of young people younger than ourselves. It is, I guess the only other disappointment was the fact that you had to be dressed in port, and that's nobody's fault on the cruise line or with Bare Necessities as the organizers. You go into places like Mexico, Costa Rica, Panama, the 3 stops we did on this cruise, and they can be fairly conservative countries, and officials come on board to inspect. The pilot comes on board before we even reach port and walks through the ship. Those people, if they see nudity, can be very upset and very offended, and it could cause the whole cruise to be fined, banned. People could be charged criminally. So we can't be nude in port, and we can't be nude as we approach port, and that's understandable. But it does make it a little uncomfortable, shall we say, because we're used to traveling and staying in naturist resorts, and you still go out and you tour and you visit the area and you visit the sites as we did. We took some fantastic tours in the ports of call we were at. We saw all kinds of interesting fauna and flora and wildlife, and but it's hot and humid. And then when we return to the ship, what you really want to do is take your clothes off. You want to take your clothes off and just let your body breathe and go for a swim, but you can't because you're still in port. You have to wait until the ship leaves, and about half an hour out of port, then you can finally take your clothes off. So that part's a little bit disappointing, but it's nobody's fault. There's nothing you can do about it. It still was an incredible trip. It was a fantastic experience. Cruising, if you've never done it before, is really great for a variety of reasons. First, you travel so comfortably because, when you travel from place to place now, it's pack, go to the airport, go through security, take half your clothes off, ironically, put them back on, wait, and wait. Delays. That's traveling by air. Traveling by ship means you get back on the ship, you get a drink, you sit by the pool, and your ship travels. Your hotel room travels with you. You never have to pack or unpack. And every day or two, you're in a different place, and you get to see new sights. I mean, that is the best way to travel. Your travel is as much part of the vacation as the destinations you're going to. And people say that, cruise ships are boring and you can't just sit around and do nothing. Well, there was more to do on the ship than I wanted to do or could have done if I tried to do everything. There were concurrent activities. There were seminars all the time, some put on by the cruise ship itself, some put on by Bare Necessities. There was some great photography seminars put on by Michael Cooney of the Naturist Society, for example. There were booths set up by the major naturist organization like Young Naturist America and Anner, and some resorts were there. There were shows every night. There was a major show in the main theater every night, musical. There was also comedians. There were several nightclubs you could go to at night, and different themes. You want country music, you want comedians, you want a piano bar. It was all there. There was a library. You could do shopping. Very good prices on shopping while you were on board. There was a casino where you could go and gamble. You could go to the gym. You could play a variety of sports. There was basketball courts. There was mini golf. You could, and of course, you could just sit around by the pool. You could go to the hot tub. You could relax. And what everybody talks about, there were more eating opportunities, basically 24 hours a day, than anybody could handle. You don't have to gain weight. You can eat responsibly, or you can not worry about it and deal with it later. You did have to be dressed, by the way, in the formal dining rooms, but you didn't have to eat in the formal dining rooms. There were many other places you could eat. And unlike the other ships, you didn't have to dress formally, even in the formal dining room. There was no formal night. Shorts and a nice t-shirt was more than acceptable in the dining room. the formal dining room, that is. And everywhere else, all the other eating opportunities, all the different, you could have Indian food, you could have a deli, you could have all kinds of foods. Any of those places, you could be nude. So you could be nude everywhere else in the ship. And some people were nude all the time. I couldn't believe this, but there were people who were more hardcore about being nude than I was. And because it was cold. The air conditioning was just way too cold in some parts of the ship. But some people were still nude, and good for you. I just I couldn't tolerate it myself. And so you could be nude everywhere: theater, gym, spa, wherever you wanted, shops. You could be nude unless you were in port. And so, for that reason, it was a great experience. Incredible service everywhere, good food, lots to do, wonderful traveling. Cruising is a great type of vacation. And of course, if you're going to cruise, a nude cruise is the way to go. And Bare Necessities has many options for nude cruising. And so I would encourage everyone to try to fit into your life at some point a nude cruise. It can actually be very affordable. For an entire 8-day cruise, you could get an inside cabin for, on this ship, I think it was about $800. That's it for the entire week. And so you just have to get yourself to Fort Lauderdale. If you can drive there, it's very cost effective. You get on a ship, $800 or so, and you've got yourself an inside cabin. That's pretty good. That's pretty good because that includes everything. That includes all the food. The only thing that are not included are your drinks, your alcoholic drinks. And if you want to take excursions, then you have to pay a bit extra for some of the different tours depending on what you select. But that is a very affordable vacation and a wonderful one at that. So certainly there's more expensive options, and we had a beautiful cabin with a balcony. But I should say that we probably spent 20 minutes over 8 days on that balcony. And most of the time when we were in our cabin, it was dark because we were sleeping, because you spend most of your time out there on the ship or out in port in the different destinations you're at. So you don't necessarily miss a huge lot by having an inside cabin, and it certainly is very affordable. So take a cruise when you have a chance. Take a look at the Bare Necessities website. There's links at the show notes, like with everything else we've talked about in the show. And hopefully you'll have the opportunity to enjoy a wonderful week and a wonderful escape, hopefully, from the winter as well. Well, that's all once again for this episode of the Naturist Living Show. Thank you for listening. My name again is Stéphane Deschênes. I'm your host for this podcast and the owner of Bare Oaks Family Naturist Park. And you'll be able to find links to everything we've talked about in the show notes on the website at naturistliving.bareoaks, that's B-A-R-E, of course, bareoaks.ca, because we are in Canada. And keep sending your notes and your suggestion. I always appreciate reading them. I respond to everybody. I can't read them all on the show anymore, but I do enjoy getting them because that's what keeps me going. I don't get paid for this. This is something I do because of my passion for ethical naturism. And so when you let me know that you appreciate listening to it and what parts you like, or you make suggestion, it encourages me. So please keep sending the notes. The show's email address is naturistliving@bareoaks.ca. Again, that's B-A-R-E, bareoaks.ca, because we're in Canada. Join us again in about a month for the next episode of the Naturist Living Show.
This episode of the Naturist Living Show was brought to you by Bare Oaks Family Naturist Park. Traditional naturist values in a modern setting. Traditional values means that naturism is more than just taking your clothes off. It is a life philosophy with physical, psychological, environmental, social, and moral benefits. Bare Oaks Family Naturist Park strives to promote those naturist values in a modern setting that provides the amenities and services that our members and visitors expect. Free your body, free your mind. Learn more at www.bareoaks.ca.